Camera rolling.
And
You ready?
All right.
Hello and welcome back to Better Mondays. John Mitchell back with you today with another guest and another idea for how you can take what might be a scary Sunday night or an anxious Sunday night and turn it into a better Monday by giving some of your life back to your job and vice versa. So I'm excited today to get a chance to introduce you to my guest, to hopefully give you something today that will help you get a little more perspective on what it means to hold life and work in a really good balance and do life together. So today I get a chance to talk to you about a catharsis. And I'm going to flesh that word out as we go. It's a word that I learned. I was actually a junior in high school when my creative writing teacher brought that word to us. And I mean, as a junior in high school, I was still talking like this. You know, I had the voice still changing even as a junior in high school. It was late for me, let me tell you. And I weighed about 120 pounds dripping wet, I think. And my English professor teacher came in and just said, I want to talk about a catharsis. And I remember kind of just joking around about it like I did, like the rest of the kids were, but it hit me really hard. And he said, basically what a catharsis is, it's a relief. It's a way to take something that's pent up inside of you and get it out. And I want to talk about that today when it comes to your job. And I think you'll also find some ideas just for your life in the midst of this as well. I do counseling. It's something that you're going to hear me talk about regularly on the show. I want to try to normalize seeing a counselor, and I've for some time seen a counselor, and different kinds at different times, and on and off for different reasons. I happen to really love BetterHelp.com, which is not a sponsor of this show or anything like that, but a great place to get some help if you're looking for counseling. And the reason I bring it up is because I had this conversation with my counselor not long ago, and I'll just never forget this, and it kind of sticks in my head every time I hear somebody say it. But she said, our words are important. How we talk about our lives and ourselves are important. And she said, when you talk about yourself, I don't want you to say, I'm tired, or I'm burnt out, or even I'm hungry. Because when you do, what you're doing is you're identifying yourself with what you're feeling. And so instead, she wanted me to change the way I talk. She wanted me to stay, instead of I'm tired or I'm anxious, to start saying, I feel anxious. And at the time, it was kind of an eye roll, honestly, for me. It was like, all right, whatever, I'm paying you. If you think this works, I'll figure it out. But the more we got, she would catch me. She's like, listen, you aren't anxious. That's not who you are. And every time you say that to someone, every time you say it to yourself, you're like embedding and ingraining the idea that you are this thing that you just simply are not. And if you can come to a point where you can stand outside of that for a minute and say, I feel this way, but I have control over it, or at least I have control over how to control it, and I am standing outside of this. This is not who I am. And I think that's an important part of our conversation today as we talk about our guest and just what she has been through in her life. She figured out how to define what she feels without letting how she feels define her. You know what I mean? So in the midst of the pandemic, we had anxiety, we had grief, we had this low-grade grief that just kind of permeated our society and all of us. We had exhaustion from trying to learn new ways to do life and masks and all of these things. And I heard over and over again, people begin sentences with, I'm tired, or I heard this one a lot. I'm burnt out on this thing. I'm burnt out on masks. I'm burnt out on whatever. And because my counselor stopped me from saying I'm whatever early on, I catch it when I hear other people say it. And I realized that, you saying that you are burnt out, you actually are making me burnt out because it's everything about you right now. And when I talked to Brittany, my friend Brittany, in the midst of the pandemic, she came to me and she basically was in this fog. She describes it as a fog. And I don't want to steal her thunder, but I want to set this up today by letting you know that what she was feeling in the midst of the pandemic about her job is something that we were all feeling or have probably most of us felt at some point in our life. And rather than waller in it, rather than become it, rather than let it sort of ruin her 40 hours or 50 hours of work a week, she decided she wasn't going to let it define her. And did some things that I think you and I can take away and say, what if I applied this to my life? How would my life look different if I did what Brittany did when it comes to how I feel about my work and about my life? Check this interview out. I got a chance to interview Brittany. I worked with her during the pandemic quite a bit, and then we got a chance to do this interview earlier this week. Check this out. I think you're really going to like her. Brittany, I'm so glad you're here. I'm with Brittany Lindholm. Brittany has become a friend of mine. We met each other during the pandemic when I think you reached out to me just to say, man, things aren't working. They're just not working for me. And that question that we've been asking everybody is just, what does it feel like for you on a Sunday night sometimes? Or what did it feel like when we talked on a Sunday to kind of dread the next day, to dread Mondays?
Yeah, I have experienced that feeling multiple times in my life, and in not just for work. I've had jobs where it felt like I didn't want to go, but my husband and I burned out doing volunteer work for an amazing goal that we were working toward just because we didn't take care of us. And we didn't have the emotional support and stuff that we needed. And so I think there's different kinds of hard, John. I think there's like the kind where what you're working toward isn't worth what you're sacrificing. And so you have that despair of like, I'm doing all this stuff, but when I get where I'm going, I'm still not going to be where I want to be. Wow. And then there's another kind where it's like, okay, I am going a direction I want to go, but the slog is longer than I thought it was going to be. Or I became a kindergarten teacher in the middle of trying to be a CPA during tax season because of COVID. And now this journey is going to take way longer than I thought, and it's still worth it, but it's not going the way I thought it was going to go. And so that perspective, they feel like different kinds of hard, but they're both a perspective crunch.
Wow, that's profound. You said something to me that I've actually been using without your permission and without your giving you credit, because it's an analogy that really resonates with people, and it started resonating with me. And that's the idea that you just felt more than anything like there was a fog. Yeah. Like you used the word fog, and it resonated with me. I'm like, yes, what is that? Talk about that fog and why you use that as a analogy.
So when I reached out to you, that was the deal. I knew I was stuck. I didn't know why. I couldn't figure out what the fundamental underlying pieces were that I was missing. We had tried shifting stuff on the surface, but I couldn't see which direction I was going, and therefore couldn't make sense of what I was doing. Yeah. And none of the surface pieces I was trying to move were working. And so when you just named this as what you're experiencing is grief, I can actually embrace and process all of the hard emotions right now because I know what's on the other side of them. Like I know that grief maybe it doesn't end completely, but it lessens. Like it's a season, and I can go through it, and like I can go through it and work with it rather than fight against it. To go back and say, okay, am I moving somewhere that I really want to go? Am I becoming the person I want to be? Yeah. And where is that? And then if I'm headed this way, how do I start to realign that direction? Yeah. Do I make changes in my free time? Do I make changes in my work life? Do I make shifts or reprioritize? And if I am headed where I want to go, then how do I practice gratitude for where I am? Because looking at the fog and focusing on it is never going to get me where I'm going. I have to see where I'm going so I can get on through, even if the journey is not linear.
There's so much there, Brittany, that I think our audience and myself can resonate with and take as practical steps. And, the idea of naming it grief, when I talked to you, I felt the fog. And the reason I named it is because I feel like naming what we're feeling or naming what we're going through is so important. Often we get so caught up in what we're doing on a day-to-day basis with work, with home, with everything else, that we either don't take time or we almost get depressed to a point where we don't stop to think about what we're actually dealing with. And when you're right, grief is not necessarily linear, but when you name it, it feels like this is a shared experience. People have lived through this, and
Yes.
it is a season of my life that I can grow through. And so that idea of taking what may feel like fog, if you're listening to this today and you feel like Brittany, during the fog, where you don't know really what you're feeling, you feel like, that nobody understands what you're going through. Really, the next goal is to name it. It is to create some sort of the word we used when I talked to you, I remember, was catharsis. One of my favorite words. And it literally, it's where we get the word catheter, which is like, I got to go to the bathroom. I got this thing inside me that has to come out. And it's uncomfortable until it does. And that's what the fog is. It's a need for catharsis. And so, your one practical idea, we kind of came to it together. How do you release the fog? How do you get that catharsis now in the midst of that for you?
I had this quote in the beginning of my junior year English book that said, I write to find out what I'm thinking about. And at 16, no, I write because I have an essay due. I write because I need to do this paper on this topic.
Yeah.
I write about specific things for specific reasons. But man, has it become true for me. Here's what's on my heart. Like, in the time since we talked, one of my grandmothers passed away. And I wrote her tribute that I got to share for my family.
Cool.
Because I sat down and I kind of bullet pointed ideas and then was able to weave together what I wanted to say. When we were done with tax season and it was time to reflect, I had major vague anxiety again. Busy season started spring of 2020 and is maybe it's finally going to slow down. If they'll quit pushing deadlines, it might slow down. And when I sat down and kind of intentionally chose the gratitude to write with, man, I got to list all the things our team was awesome at. And because I got to name what we were able to accomplish even during the pandemic, it actually made this space to say it was a sacrifice towards something valuable. Like, and then let's process that. Like, let's finish this June deadline and have a beer. Let's sit 25 people in a backyard somewhere because we can and have a
and
fire.
we'll never take it for granted again. Hopefully that we can sit
Right.
25 people in a yard again. So what does your habits look like? Like how often is it habitual, or is it just when you feel like it? How do you create some habits?
I usually during the week I'm up in the morning before work and I spend some time writing, processing. And I do intentionally choose some gratitude because that's kind of where I want to land. And then because of that, then there's space to say, I'm thankful for this. And here's some other stuff. And then sometimes in the evenings after the kids are in bed, I'll just sit down with something topical, something that's on my mind. And of course I can't do that every night. But man, there are days when it's in there and something just needs to come out.
So if you, your story I love so much because one of the things that we don't want to do with this podcast is make people feel like they have to leave their job in order to be happy. Your story is so much about your posture towards your own work and not leaving your job to be happier, but changing your perspective. And what would you just say in closing to somebody out there who may feel like you do, and they're in a fog right now at their job? Maybe they're kind of blaming their boss. Maybe they're blaming their situation. What would you say about getting a different perspective on your job and how important it is for your future?
Yeah. I mean, for me, the writing helps because it helps me organize my thoughts. And I think like connecting to your dreams and knowing where you want to go is a way to get out of, hey, I'm going the wrong direction. That's why this is so hard. And then noticing what's around you, even in the fog. I mean, you can't see very far in a fog till it lifts, but if you could notice or remember places you've been, you can usually see backwards more clearly than forwards. So anything you can be thankful for helps you remember why you're headed the direction you're headed. And for me, writing helps get all that out of vague thoughts in my head and into words, like you said, because once you can name it, then it becomes a lot more powerful.
Well, Brittany, thanks so much for your conversation. Thanks for sharing your life. Who knows how many people today are in a fog and have found some hope in this to get out of their own fog. And so I really appreciate your friendship. I love the fact that we got to meet while you were in your fog, so that we kind of walk through it together. And I think it deepened our friendship. And I look forward to many more opportunities to spend together, just growing.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for naming it. The fog was not very easy to process till I knew where I was going. So
it's awesome.
Appreciate you.
Honored to be it. Hey, thanks, Brittany.
Thanks, John.
Talk to you soon. Oh, man, it was good to catch up with Brittany. While I was watching her interview again, it reminded me that she looks totally different than she did the first time I talked to her. She called me on Zoom back right in the middle of 2020. And was dealing a whole lot with her family, with her job, with just this sense of, well, she said it, fog in her life. And there was this demeanor in her that looks so much different than what I saw on this interview right now. She's very even keeled, and she's an accountant. She's very pragmatic, but there's this side of her that feels more energetic, that feels more interested in connecting life and work, and honestly just feels a little relieved. Every time I see this video, it reminds me of just the opportunity I've got in my life to change the way I think about where I'm at. You know, the truth is, when I met her the first time, she told me she was depressed. And she didn't say, I feel depressed. She said, I am depressed, right? And my counselor would say, hang on just a minute. And I kind of did to her. I kind of stole my counselor's idea. And I said, listen, you are not this. This is how you feel right now. And that fog that Brittany described, it will probably get to you at some point in your life if it hasn't already. Maybe you're listening to this today because you're kind of desperate in the midst of your fog. You're looking for somebody who might have some idea as to how to get out of that sort of a haze with your work and your life. What I want to kind of pull out of Brittany's story today is a couple things, and I mentioned it as we started this episode, that I want to talk about the idea of catharsis. When my English creative writing teacher told us about catharsis, he gave this assignment, and he said, what I want you to do is just write all the things that are going on that you don't feel comfortable telling anybody. And he said, I want you to do two things. I want you to write like nobody's going to read this. And then I want you to fold it up. And on the front of it, I want you to tell me whether or not you want me to read it. And so I thought, well, I want him to read it. You know, I think there's a grade for this, and I want him to read it. So I'm sure I'll let him read it. Well, I got to writing, and I started writing things that I hadn't told anybody. I'm a junior in high school. You can imagine the things that are going through my head that I've never actually said to anyone. And I got through the page, and I wrote on the outside, folded it up, and I wrote on the outside, please do not read. And he came around to start collecting them. And as he did, he walked up and down the aisles, and he said, you know, there is something about a catharsis that you will need the rest of your life. And even if this just seems like an assignment to you, you need to figure out a way to create an outlet for what you're feeling and what's going on inside your head on a regular basis. And he said, honestly, no one ever has to read it. Although, when you allow someone inside to that part of who you are, it allows them a new opportunity for friendship with you. So as he was walking by, I really respect him. I still respect him. I live in the same town as he does now. And as he was walking by, I grabbed that note and I crossed out the do not part. And it just said, please read. And he did, and he happened to be the kind of professor or the kind of teacher that cared enough about me that he got a chance to talk to me, and we got to talk about some of the things I wrote, but more importantly, how important for the rest of my life it was going to be for me to have a catharsis. The idea of a catharsis is this idea of relief. It's about getting pressure that's built up in us out. And so part of what I want you to think about today, as funny as it might sound, is that inside of you right now, it's like you got to go to the bathroom. And if you aren't creating an opportunity to get what you're feeling and how you're experiencing life out on a regular basis, you get this pressure that's built up inside of you. And I know it might sound ethereal. I know it might sound a little touchy-feely to you, but I'm telling you, you're going to get to a point in your life where you need to get this out. And right now is the time. If you're not feeling that sense of, I got to go right now, if you're not feeling that sense of needing that relief right now, now's the great time to create a habit. Because at some point, the pressure will build up. And you need to find a habit in your life that will allow you to get rid of the pressure that's inside you. So here's what happens when that pressure builds up in your life. I'm going to give you an analogy right back to if you have to go to the bathroom, and you're on a long car ride. Everybody in the car, maybe you just stopped. This happens to me for some reason. We just stopped. I got a great big bottle of water. I drank it really fast, and it's only been 30 minutes, and I got to go again really bad. And I'm too embarrassed to tell everybody in the car, I got to go again. And you got to go, and all you can think about is the fact that you got to go. And this is what happens with that pressure inside of your brain. If you don't find a way to get what you're thinking and feeling out on a regular basis, you end up with this pressure that makes you feel like you got to go, and you can't see anything else around you. Everything is colored by how you feel about that pressure. You're in the car with somebody, you got to go really bad, and they ask you a question and you can't think clearly. Same thing happens when you're at work and your mind is so foggy and you're so full of pent up anxiety and frustration that when someone asks you a question at work, maybe you answer quickly, or you answer and your words don't come out the way they should, and person walks out of the room and you're like, what? Why did I say that? Or what was that? Or I don't even think I understand what I meant by that, right? And this all happens because of this pressure that builds up inside of us. When I talked to Brittany, it was very clear to me. I don't know if you've had this experience with a friend or somebody you've talked to before where they're missing the forest for the trees, where they're talking to you about something and I'm listening, but I just want a chance to tell her what I think she needs. And when she finally kind of let up when we were talking originally, I just said, have you thought about writing? Have you thought about taking every morning and using it as a catharsis? And the way she was expressing herself just made me think she'd be a good writer. So she started writing, and it created a relief. It created this constant opportunity for her to let it out just a little bit at a time instead of have this pressure every day. The truth is, you need this in your life. And I don't know what it looks like for you. Writing is what it looked like for Brittany. I do a little bit of writing, but I also, I got to be honest, I haven't said this to very many people, and I'm getting ready to say it to my whole podcast audience, but I do play the guitar, not very well. In fact, I barely play the guitar, but for some reason, if I just think about the chords and I just try to play a little bit, it's a relief for me. And even though I'm not actually putting words to what I'm feeling, somehow it gives me perspective. I've got friends who listen to podcasts to do that. I've got friends who run to do that. Darren Root, our general manager here at Rootworks, he started walking during the pandemic and it changed his life. It was this opportunity for him to get a breath in his life and create catharsis for all the pressure that's built up. So just like when you got to go to the bathroom, when you've got to go really bad, you can't see anything but what you're feeling. And that colors your entire experience. So no wonder you hate your job. If you got all this pressure built up, you can't see anything but that. And so you don't even give your job a chance to be something that could be part of your life. So then you come to this point where you finally do get the perspective. And what often happens to people who haven't created a habit is they actually blow up on someone. It's just one little thing at a time, and finally someone comes in and says, hey, are you going to have that report Friday? And all of a sudden you turn around and you explode on them. And all of the pressure comes out at one time. And all of that stuff, and all of a sudden they walk out of the office and they're like, man, what was that? And you think, man, what was that? All they asked me about was my report, but that wasn't the problem. That was just the end of the pressure. And you couldn't take it anymore. And what happens then, I've seen this happen so often, it's happened in my life too. Then you go home for the evening and you feel so much better for some reason. I feel like I need to go apologize to this person. I wish I hadn't have said that, but all of a sudden, all of that is out and I feel different. The truth is we need healthy ways of releasing all of that pressure on a regular basis. Whether it's running, whether it's playing guitar, whether it's finding a way to write, whether it's a friend that you trust that you can talk to on a regular basis, whether it's betterhelp.com and finding a counselor, whatever it is, you need to find a way, a rhythm in your life for releasing and creating a catharsis. When my mom's a counselor, and she often teaches children, or used to, about this pressure. And she would take a 2-liter bottle of Diet Pepsi and she would like shake it up while she's talking. And, everybody in the audience is like, what is she doing? She would just keep talking, about something, and she'd just keep shaking it up. And, 10 minutes in, she's got this bottle and nobody's paying attention to her. They're all watching the Pepsi, right? Because when the pressure builds, everybody gets tense. Man, this is part of the problem in your office. If you've got anxiety in your office, if you've got tension in your office, part of the problem is you've got this pressure building and everybody's just kind of tiptoeing around it. And I love the analogy of the Diet Pepsi bottle. When you let it get so big that it can't hold its contents anymore, it explodes all over the stage. But what if you just take the cap and you just a little bit at a time? And you do that every now and then, just a little bit of time. Release the pressure a little bit of time. You'll get to the point where the pressure is gone, and it's because you have very methodically and carefully release just a little bit of that pressure at a time. And that's the idea for today. You need a way to, on a regular basis, just like Brittany did, on a regular basis, find a discipline in your life. Now, not something you hate. So I'm not asking you to run if you hate to run. I'm not asking you to journal if you hate to journal. I'm saying that there is already something in your life that allows you to feel catharsis. Find out what it is. Let everyone in your world know. Let your spouse know. Let your kids know. Guys, this is important to me. I know it sounds like I'm just playing really bad guitar, but this is an important part of my mental health. And make it a part of every day, especially of your work day, every day of your life. If you are into the part of your life where you may be feeling like it's time to change careers, one of the things I feel really responsible for on this podcast, in fact, I've already got some conversation going back between listeners, hearing some of our stories, and may get the idea that we're saying, go find a new job. And actually, I couldn't be saying anything further from that. The truth is most jobs are fine. It's the life inside the job that's the problem. And so before you make any rash decisions about your job, before you go out and put the exact same problems that you have now out and on Indeed and look for another place to take them, find ways of making sure that you are who you want to be first, so that when you go to work, you're bringing your best there. And this is one of those things. Take an opportunity every single day to find something that allows you to release that pressure. For me, I love to play guitar, as bad as I am at it, and it helps me a lot. The other thing for me is I just need to talk. I'm a really verbal person. My wife is not, but she loves me, so she just listens. And there are times where I just feel like I just need to talk. I just need to say it. Nobody needs to fix it. I don't need to really, I just need to get it out. So whatever it is for you, find the people in your life who care about you. Let them know that you're creating a new habit, and do it on a regular basis. Make it a part of your work and your life. So it's time for the Mayhews. I want to put the ball back in your court today. That if you're struggling with your work, if Sunday nights suck for you, if you have a hard time sleeping on Sundays because you got to go back to work on Monday, then I want to put the ball back in your court for a minute. Maybe it's not your boss. Maybe it's not just the work office. Maybe it starts with a perspective. Maybe you aren't burnout. You aren't tired. You aren't sick of this job. You're just feeling tired. You're just feeling sick of this job. And if you can start to see outside of what may be defining you, then you can look at it from the perspective of something that you can begin to fix. And maybe it starts with a catharsis for you on a regular basis. So today, may you name what you're feeling and not be defined by it. May you choose to find a new way to approach the everyday grind. May you choose to find a new habit inside your life that will allow you to create that catharsis. And may you get a perspective to find a rhythm of catharsis in your life every day. And I hope it leads to better Mondays. And I'll look forward to next time. Thanks again.